Why does the educated empath always win in interpersonal relationships? Meaning that at the end, the educated empath, people just like you and me, we always get what we want from our interpersonal relationships. Because, truth be told, you're most likely tired of carrying the heavy burden of other people's feelings, and you've already started your healing, you've already started setting boundaries, you've already started caring for yourself the way you want to always care for others. So why is it that we always win at interpersonal relationships when we're educated about how our empathy and sensitivity works? Well, this is exactly what we will be talking about in this video. So if you are curious and want to understand this topic deeper, stay with me until the end, because I'm sure it will be such a valuable video for you. That being the case, let's directly get into the topic. Hey there, I am Daniel, a relationship alignment coach and a creator of the Soulful Relationships Experience, a 3 to 4 month one-on-one coaching program that helps empaths to completely eradicate any toxic, manipulative, narcissistic, and power struggle relationship dynamics and experience and align themselves to attracting only people who support and lift them up in their journey. And what I've noticed is that when we actually start healing, there are a couple of things we realize until we are able to better manage our energy and not always waste it on people who aren't willing to reciprocate, right? Because honestly, again, truth be told, it just doesn't work that way. There are some people who aren't willing to give back to us what we are always giving to others. And since we don't want to be depleted, like energetically depleted, at some point of our journey, we learn that it's not in our benefit, nor is it in the benefit of others, that we always stand for their feelings and to care for their feelings and their needs. So I've realized and discovered 3 points that the educated empath goes before actually starting to win in their interpersonal relationships. So first of all, I've realized that, well, when we start healing, we start to realize that, well, part of the time we are being naive and we stop trusting others as easily as we did before. And let me know in the comments if you've already realized that for yourself. Because most likely what has happened to you is that previously in your life, you have attracted a lot of narcissistic people, energy vampires, people who just drain you out, right? And so eventually you realize that, well, I am a little bit naive. I'm trying to always be there for people who don't have my best interest at heart. And so I've been hurt because of that. I've been neglected. I've been taken advantage of. And so I've realized that I'm a little bit naive. And knowing this naivety, now I'm becoming more educated, right? So knowing that I am a little bit naive sometimes, now I don't trust others as easily as I did before. And so I don't always go to help others and to save them until I realize that they're also willing to be honest, vulnerable, and transparent, and to be open-hearted, to be kind-hearted, to be to care for others. Because sometimes in my past, again, what I've realized is that, and here I'm saying I realized, but I'm talking about the empath collective in general, so what every empath realizes. What I've realized is that, well, there are some people who don't have my best interests at heart. They're egocentric, they only care for themselves, they think they're the center of the universe, and it's almost as if they want to use me for their own advantage, but they're not willing to give back what I'm giving to them. So they're not willing to create this symbiotic relationship. And I'm actually grateful for these people in my past, because thanks to them, I realized about my naivety and I've started healing. So this is something great, right? And this is a huge point, a huge point for empaths to realize that we are naive, which gets me to the second point. And the second point is also something interesting that we inevitably realize on our journey. What we realize is that But we start understanding that sometimes our empathy and sensitivity is partly a defense mechanism. And thus, we decide to not make assumptions about others and be really impeccable with our words and transparent in our feelings, in sharing our feelings. So, what do I mean by that? Well, for most empaths, again, what happens is that we've been we've grown up in a, let's say, a toxic environment when we were children. We maybe grew up in a destructive family, in like an abusive family, and there were abusive relationship dynamics between our parents. And again, if you watched some of the videos in my channel, you might know this story. But for me, it was the same. Like, I grew up in a almost like a war zone. It was consistently like 2 times per week for months, for like 5 or 6 months in the year. There were like scandals and like conflicts at home. My father was drinking. They were fighting verbally mostly with my mother, and so it was a war zone. And this continued for years until at some point my mother divorced my father, and then from there things started, like the dynamics in our family started being more healthy. But yeah, what happens is that most of the time we grew up in similar families, in destructive families. And so then part of our empathy and sensitivity is there to keep us safe, because we want to be so attunedly aware, like so intensely aware of other people's intentions, so that we feel secure. And we want to know, what does my parent who is abusive is thinking about and feels, so that if he has a negative intention towards me, I can use my empathy and sensitivity to put a protective shield and then like try to hide or run away, and or try to always please them so that they don't become aggressive. And this happens, like, this is partly the place from which our empathy and sensitivity is motivated, is inspired. And so thanks to this dynamic, thanks to, like, in response to us growing up in a similar dynamic in our families, what happens is that we've developed our empathy and our sensitivity to such an extent to be aware of other people's negative intentions, so that we can protect ourselves from them beforehand. So that meaning that sometimes we are biased in our assumptions. Sometimes what we are feeling about others is not necessarily the truth. And that's why I said it's really useful. We become educated when we realize that we make a lot of assumption about what other people think towards us and about their intentions. And some of the times these assumptions, they are not correct. So let's say we are still harboring the belief system that there were bad people out there who want to hurt me, right? And so I'm afraid of that. And since I'm afraid of that and I hold that assumption unconsciously, then I extend my sensitivity and empathy to others to be so attunedly aware of what their intention towards me is, so that I can stay secure. So instead of feeling secure within my own body and centered with my own feelings, and communicating transparently and openly how I feel about others, communicating clearly what do I assume about others to see whether what I assume is right or wrong, I try to protect myself by believing my assumption that everybody has negative intentions towards me, which again, this is not always the case, right? So that's why we learn to not make as much assumptions about others and to be really impeccable with our words. And it's like one of my favorites agreements from the book of Don Miguel, The Four Agreements, if you have heard it. So we become impeccable with our words and really transparent in our feelings. Because once we are able to communicate transparently our inner world, the contents of our inner world, meaning our feelings, our thoughts, and our assumptions using spoken word, then we become masters at speaking, at being transparent, at like putting on the table how we feel about others and what we think others feel about us, so that we can like integrate everybody's feelings in a social circle and be aware of them, not assuming that we are always right, but checking with them, like speaking honestly. And through this honesty and transparency, we almost ensure the fact that our needs get met. And we can also set boundaries, which is my third point that I will explore in a moment. But yeah, this is something really important. And let me know again in the comments if this is something that you're going through. Realizing that sometimes your empathy and sensitivity, it's a defense mechanism. You're being so sensitive and empathetic because you want to feel safe and secure that other people won't hurt you. Because maybe partly you're afraid that everybody is out there to get you, or like everybody is, I don't know, a narcissist, because you've been in a relationship with a narcissist who really like used you intensely and you are hurt by that. And so eventually through your healing you realize that, well, if I don't want to attract any more narcissists in my life, I better speak up my feelings and like put boundaries in place and express my needs clearly, compared to just assuming how other people feel about me, not speaking my truth, and then just being avoidant, running away, hiding, and so on and so forth. And I know that this could trigger you, by the way, if you're just going through that process. But if you are already like moving committedly through that process, going committedly through that process, then I suppose you feel a feeling of relief, knowing that you're like in the right direction in your healing journey. So this is my second point. Now the third point is basically that at some point we realize that we cannot save others if they're not willing to be saved. And that's why we decided to take responsibility of our own healing and communicate our boundaries and needs clearly. Because again, truth be spoken, you cannot really save somebody who is not looking to take responsibility of their own life. And if you continuously do so, what you're doing is you're abandoning yourself for another and reciprocating, like perpetuating the dynamics behind the wound of abandonment. And maybe you're being too pleasing of others. Like you're being a people pleaser because you always try to save others. You always try to meet their expectations. You compromise your own values. And eventually you realize this doesn't work. If I continue doing this, well, I'll keep myself in toxic and destructive relationship dynamics in which I'm just giving and giving and giving and giving and giving a little bit more, expecting that eventually the other person will realize how much I gave and they will give back to me. But if I don't communicate my needs and boundaries, well, it's just a hopeful expectations that never gets fulfilled. So that's why eventually you realize that I can take responsibility of myself instead of always trying to help others, who are people who are not looking to be saved. And let me share with you a quick story here. Like a while ago, I've been in that dynamic in which I was trying to take responsibility of my romantic partner, take responsibility of my romantic partner's healing, because I didn't feel safe and secure within my own body when they were being too jealous, let's say. And there wasn't any reason to be jealous. And I was trying to like say to them, well, these are your limiting beliefs that you should take responsibility of. And if you want help, I can help you. And you should really look at your feelings because there is no reason to be jealous. And I was trying to be too pushy of trying to help them heal, which in a way just pushed them away from me. And this is exactly what I'm saying. You cannot save other people if they're not willing to be saved. And so eventually I realized I just have this need to communicate with people who are willing to be transparent, to be responsible for their own healing journey. And like I can only be in a relationship with somebody who has this intention to be clear, transparent, honest with their feelings, and to like at least have some movement towards their own self-healing, right? So instead of trying to save others now, I just don't connect emotionally with people who are not willing to work on themselves, because I know that if I do, well, I will get into a codependent relationship again, which isn't in my best interest. It isn't in the other's best interest. So I'm just self-sabotaging, right? So that's why I learned, and like this is what most empaths learn. When we become educated, when we start healing, and this is how we actually start winning in our interpersonal relationships, meaning that we get our needs met, and we also like we are also there and take care for our partners and for our partner. So eventually we learn to communicate our boundaries. Let's say I have a boundary, a healthy boundary, that I'm not willing to become emotionally close with somebody who isn't willing to be transparent, with somebody who just wants to be right and wear masks all the time, with somebody who is like who always wants to who doesn't take seriously my feelings, who only cares for themselves. I'm not willing to be emotionally available for people who are more egocentric and narcissistic. So I can be still be like acquainted with them, but they will never be friends. And I have these boundaries. And then I also want to express my needs. I need you to be honest with me. I need you to be vulnerable when we're having these beautiful conversations. And let me give you another example. Before learning that, I was afraid of conflict. And so whenever there was conflict, whenever we had different opinions, I had a different opinion than the friend I was talking to. This was like, I almost had a panic attack and it was scary. And eventually I realized, well, I am the one who is being empathetic and sensitive. And I'm the one who can express my feelings, who can also be aware of how the other person feels, express their feelings if they're not willing to do that. And by putting all the feelings on the table, we can use this conflict, meaning that what is conflict? Conflict is just the idea that we have different opinions on a topic we are talking about. And so I realized that conflict is not something dangerous. Conflict is actually a vehicle for greater intimacy, which is something really beautiful. But I only was able to realize that once I started communicating really transparently all my feelings and what I assume other people feel, to see whether my assumption is real or not. Sometimes it's real, at other times it's motivated from fear. So it's like a defense mechanism. So these, my friends, are some of the things you're realizing, and I'm pretty sure you already do, or you're doing so by watching this video now. So let me know in the comments whether you've already realized and embodied some of these things, or whether you're still on that journey and you're integrating them in your life. So that being the case, this was everything I wanted to share in this video. And now one more thing. If you're new to setting boundaries and like communicating your boundaries and expressing your needs clearly and connecting to your gifts, I would highly encourage you to check out the 3 Questions Healthy Boundaries framework. You can find it in the description. And inside of this free document, it's like a 3-page long document. There is a process you can try to connect with your boundaries, your needs, and your gifts, and learn how to communicate them transparently so that you can actually start healing directly in the dynamics of your relationships, which is such a beautiful process. So that being the case, my friend, I want to thank you so much for watching. I trust you found this video to be helpful. If you're new to the channel, subscribe to it. I'm Daniel, your host. And in this channel, you get all the tools you need to experience the most conscious, uplifting, and meaningful relationships possible. If you also want to connect one-on-one and talk about your healing and how you can surround yourself with only people who support and lift you up in the next 3 to 4 months, you can schedule a free discovery session, free emotionally freeing discovery session, in which we can create a personalized strategy plan on how you can get there in just 3 to 4 months. That being the case, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for staying with me. I trust you found the video to be helpful. Like, comment down below, subscribe, and I will see you around in the next video. I love you, my friend. Bye-bye for now.